Hi everyone, Fiona. My name is Alon. I'm a technical lead at Dropbox, also a software engineer. And I came here all the way from Tel Aviv to talk with you about the one thing I'm most passionate about, which is football. And this is a Scottish team. Any fans for this team, for the Scotland national team here? Only one. Okay, I also don't like this team. They've been in Israel a few times before. Sorry. But I want to go to the game. There was a game, there's supposed to be a game this Thursday. I want to go to this game because I like football so much. So I want to see if there are available tickets. So I didn't know where to start from, but what to do when you don't know something? You Google it. So I went to Google, where can I find tickets to Scotland against Ukraine? And Google's still not smart enough to answer my questions, but it did direct me to this site where it's really obvious what I need to do next, right? There's a button there, buy online. So I pressed this button just to be directed to another website. So also here I can buy the tickets, so I pressed the button again and got to a new site where I can actually select my seats, which is pretty cool. I thought at the time there are available tickets. But I pressed another time the button and I got directed to another page. No, there is no seats yet. You need to first register a new account. So I pressed the button again, going to direct it to another page, which now I have a real task. I need to actually fill up a form. And it's a really easy task, right? I know my first name, my last name, my birthday, and everything. So I filled it all up, and then I got a really hard task. I need to come up with a password. And not just a password. I'll just read it up for you. So the password needs to have 8 to 64 characters long, contain 1 uppercase, 3 lowercase, 1 number, 1 special character. I had to read it twice. I was a little exhausted at this time. I didn't have any password. So I closed the browser, thought maybe I'll come back later, and I never did that. So I understand why security is so important and why I have to come up with all these rules. But at the end, they lost the customer. So why am I still here talking about password? Password is something from the 90s, right? We're 2022 now. We have so many other means of security, like you can authenticate with fingerprint, with face recognition, sign in with Google, with Facebook, with Spotify, with Airbnb, sign in with everything. Why are we still talking about passwords? Well, apparently, all these together, all these means of authentication, covers only 2% of the website in the internet. For the rest, the 98% will only let you log in with a password. And why should you, as a website owner, should care about your user's password strength? Well, the number one reason and the number one risk is data breaches. Data breaches alone, so you can find in the dark net almost 3 billion accounts of users, and some of them even with passwords. All in all, this costs for companies more than $2 trillion a year. And I'm sure all of you hire the best expert in the world, and you put everything to secure your site, all the means you can. But at the end, shit happens. If it happened, it's also happened to Instagram, Facebook, Microsoft. Also, almost every company you can think of had at least one data breach. And if it happened to them, I hope not, but it can also happen to you. And when someone, like a hacker, puts their hand on your database, on your users, the only thing that can differentiate between a user that is still safe and a user that their account has been hacked and they lost their data is the strength of their password. So you might say to yourself now, well, that's easy to solve, right? I can just require my users to use very strong passwords. I can also require them to use two-factor authentication, email validation, and add more and more means of security. But the problem is the more you add more means of security, you also make your site or the registration process more complicated. Right? Just remember the last time you sat in front of a computer, wanted to sign up to a site, then you put a password, the site tells you this password is not strong enough, So you put a stronger password, and then you get an email, so you need to go to your email to validate your email. And then they also send you an SMS. So now you need to grab your phone, which is in the other room. All this, like you haven't even seen the service, and you need to do all that. So also, compromising on security is not a good idea, right? You still want your site to be secured. So you want to find somewhere the balance between these two, maybe advising your users, not requiring, but advising them to use strong means of security. And whatever you want to do, you don't want to be in the weak side of security. You do want to stay between the advice and the require. Depends on the sensitivity of your data. And you can think about more creative ways to do that. For example, maybe limit some of your features in your site for people who use strong password or two-factor authentication, or maybe let them finish the registration and only them advise them or try to push them to use more means of security. This is what we do also. Maybe if you have Android, you've seen it. There's like a security checkup tool. Also at Dropbox, we have like 5 steps that you need to complete if you want to make your data more secured. But that's for the B2C product. At Dropbox, we also have our B2B product, where companies, teams, organizations can come up and buy a Dropbox and share and collaborate on data. So these teams also have an administrator. This can be someone who bought the Dropbox or just the IT administrator for their team. And these administrators want to configure the settings for their users. Want to configure, like, for example, the password sense or other things. So a few months ago, this kind of admins came to us and asked us, Dropbox, look, this is what your competitors has. This is a panel where I, as an admin, can configure some things for my users. I can configure how many characters they need to use in their password. If we require numbers in their passwords and the number of numbers. If we require special characters for their passwords and the number of special characters. And I can continue. You see there are many checkboxes here, many drop-downs, many decisions for these admins to make. And at Dropbox, we saw that, and we thought, like, can we build something simpler than like all these decisions? But in order to do that, we first need to understand the problems that the user has. And we do that by asking the 5 whys. And if you're not familiar with the 5 whys, it's a technique that started in Japan in the car manufacturing, like many other things that started there, in which if you want to understand the core issue of a defect, you need to ask 5 times why. Like why, until you understand the core issue. So we did the same thing with our customer who came us with this request. We asked them 5 times why until we understand. So let's see how it works. So the customer came to us and asked us, Dropbox, I want to have the same password controls as your competitors. So OK. Why do you want that? And then he told us, well, I want to force my users to use long password with special characters and numbers. Oh, you want that? Why do you want that? Well, obviously, I want more control over my users' passwords. Oh, we now get somewhere. You want more control over users' passwords. But why? Well, I want them to use strong passwords. Oh, you want them to use strong passwords. But again, like, why do you want that? Obviously, I want to reduce the risk of account hijacking. Then the last why do you want that? Why do you want all this? Well, then you get the final answer, which is the core issue that the customer has, that the admin has. I want my team's files to be safe. So they don't really want all the long passwords and special characters. They want to keep their team's file safe by enforcing the users to use strong passwords. So if we want to understand what's strong, so we first need to understand what a strong password is. I put here 2 passwords. One is Troubadour with some tweaks in it, and then the other password is Blue Giraffe Plays Ball. And let's make a short poll. Which password is better? So who thinks that Troubadour is a better password? Cool. Who thinks the Blue Giraffe Plays Ball is a better password? Nice, something like 50-50. So I don't know the answer. Sorry. What do you do when you don't know the answer? You go to Google, right? Google, what's considered to be a good password? And the answer I got from Google, a good password must contain 4 elements. It has to have 6 characters or more, mixed cases of upper and lower case, also numbers and special characters. Well, I've put these 2 passwords in a table to compare them. And as you can see, the Troubadour has all these elements, while the Blue Giraffe plays ball, not so much. But then I recall a story I really liked as a kid. It's called Alibaba. Well, sorry, not this Alibaba, but this one. So in Alibaba, there's a very famous password. Probably all know it, Open Sesame. And this password has no special characters, no numbers, none of all these. Like, passwords existed long before we had internet or computers. So there must be a better definition for a strong password. And what you do when you don't find the answer in Google, you go to comics books. And I really like a comics called XKCD. I don't know if you know it. And I found a much better definition in these comics. And if you want to have strong password, you only need to have 2 elements. One, it has to be hard to guess, but still easy to remember. That's all you need for a good password. So what does it mean, hard to guess? Hard to guess is the number of guesses required to crack the password. So let's make an example. This is a naive estimation for a number of guesses at the password that you need to make to crack a password. And the number of guesses is the cardinality in the power of the length. Oh, some spooky math here. Sorry, so let's make an example. So the cardinality is a number of options, the range of options that you have for a single character. In the lower alphabet, you have 26 options. But if you also have uppercase, numbers, and special characters, we now have 95 options. And let's take a random 6 letters password. So guessing the first letter will take you 26 guesses. Guessing the second letter, 26 letters. So 26 multiplied by 26 multiplied by 26, it's 26 to the power of 6. And if you have all the special characters, numbers, and so on, it's 95 to the power of 6. So the first password, if we try to break it in the rate of 1,000 guesses a second, it will take you only 15 days. But if you add all these rules, it will take you 140 years, which is literally impossible. So now you understand where all these rules came from, right? The longer the password is, the more cardinality you add to it, the password will be stronger. But, as I said, this is a naive estimation, right? Because we're all humans. We're not robots. So at least for me, remembering 6 random characters with all these rules, like all special characters and numbers and so on, is impossible. So what I do, and probably a lot of other people do, is we're using templates. Right? We're taking a word and then doing some tweaks. For example, Troubadour. So this is an uncommon word in English. I don't know. It's pretty uncommon. So there are about 2 to the power of 16 words like this one. And then you do some tweaks. So you take the first letter. You have 2 options, uppercase it or not. Then we listed some other letters. So lit, if you're not familiar, it's a visual graphic transformation. When you take a O, you turn it into a 0. 4 becomes A, E becomes 3. For some reason, people think it's very sophisticated. But it's really easy for a computer to crack that. There's only 2 options. Either we take the O, we turn it into a 0, or not. Not very sophisticated. So you have 3 letters like this one here. For each one, we have 2 options. Then you have a special characters. We have 16 special characters, 10 digits as an option. And then the order between them, you have 2 options. If you sum this all up, you'll get 2 to the power of 28, which will take you 3 days to crack this password. This password is not very strong. What about the other one, the Blue Giraffe plays ball? So there are 4 words in English here, pretty common. Each one from a dictionary, 2 to the power of 11. If you sum this all up, you get 2 to the power of 44. It will take you 550 years to crack this password. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I don't plan to live so much. So we saw now which password is harder to guess, but what about the easy to remember? Well, obviously the trombone, or sorry, it was a troubadour. And then we listed a few letters. I think the first one, or is it? Like, I've done this talk like a few times before, and I honestly can swear I have no idea what is the original password. No idea, really. One of these maybe, maybe not. What was the second password? Yeah, so blue giraffe plays ball will always be blue giraffe plays ball. So we saw now which password is better. Let's make another example. Password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exclamation mark. There are 3 parts here. Password is the first password in any password dictionary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the second one. I hope you don't use any of these. Also, exclamation mark, there are 16 options for special characters. You don't need me here to tell you this password can be cracked in a second, right? So let's put this password in the most popular sites today. Let's start with Gmail. I put this password in Gmail. Gmail tells me this is a very strong password. I got full bar. This is really surprising. So maybe Facebook does a better work. Nah, also very strong. What about Twitter? Also strong password. And maybe Apple? Nah, Apple also told me this password is strong. And also, why it's so strong? Thank you, Apple. What if we had a tool that we can put the password and we'll break it into parts and then estimate each part without all these rules? Well, we do have a tool. It's called ZXCVBN, developed in Dropbox a few years ago. It's open sourced under MIT, so we can do anything you want with it. And it has more than 10K stars at GitHub. And if you want to use this tool today, it's very simple. You can just npm install it if you use JavaScript, then require, or if you use Python, import, and just call the function and get the full analysis of the password, like what's the part, and if it's strong or not. So just install, import, and use it and call it. Very simple, straightforward. And if you don't believe me, you might believe Bill Bear. He's the one who came in 2003 with all those rules. And a few years ago, he regretted all these rules. He said, this was all wrong. We did it all wrong. And it's also pretty formal now with NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who came up with new updates, refreshed their recommendation. So you don't need any more password hints if you've seen it in the past. Also, they recommend not to use knowledge-based authentication. It's a long word for the questions you have sometimes. You know, where did you learn? What's your first pet name? When did you have breakfast? When did you brush your teeth? All those questions are not required anymore. It's not recommended. No more expiration without reason, so you don't need to refresh your password every few months. And no composition rules, like the one we saw. These are not recommended anymore. Back to our problem, right? We had this customer who came for us, asked us to build all this panel with all these options, checkboxes, drop-downs. So once we understand their problem, what they want to solve, instead of building all this, we build this. Just one panel with one option. And there's one drop-down. Do you want to require your users to use a strong password? And there are 3 options. No, I want to require them using strong password or very strong password. That's all. And this was a win-win-win situation. First win, because it was easy and fast to build this. Like, we don't need all these checkboxes, design system, and all that. You have one option. It's easy to design, easy for the product, and easy for developers. You don't need to think about all the edge cases and all the overlapping states. Just call the algorithm and get the result back. It was also simple for our admins because they didn't need to make all the decisions. Only one decision you need to make, and the UI is very clear here. And also, it's so powerful. If we talk about security, we now have a more powerful tool who really estimates your passwords. Cool, so let's wrap it up now. Why I should even care about your user's password? So we say that this can be the last line of defense. If somebody, I hope not, but if somebody can put their hands on your passwords in your database, this can be the last line of defense. Also, what is a strong password? We talked about a more realistic way to estimate strong passwords. But we also, how to estimate passwords, so you can do it manually if you want. But I also gave a tool for you so you can just start using it today. But more important than that, what did we learn about security and usability? And if they can both live together, can we build sites that are both secured but also has a good UX? Well, the first lesson is don't build everything automatically if somebody comes to you, just like copying your competitors. Try to get out of the box. Maybe all the beliefs you have or perspective you had are all wrong, as we saw here. Instead, asking them the 5 times why. Really try to understand what they want you to solve, like what's the core issue that really makes them problems. And you can do this, and once you understand, like what's the core problems, you can come up with some more smarter algorithms. The one I use, I didn't talk about all the technicality, but we're using some dynamic programming algorithm, but you can also use some machine learning, for example, that can make some of the problems solved easier, or some APIs you can call just to make your site simpler, instead of asking the users to do all that. So come up with smart algorithms. But in order to do that, we need to have early conversations between designers and programmers. So any designers here? Wow, almost everyone. So if there's one tip is try to talk with, as early as you can with your engineers, because as you see, they might come up with some smart solutions and some, using technology to solve problems. Any engineers? Not so much. But for engineers, I can tell that, again, try to be involved in the product. Try to really understand your customers. Don't be like this code monkey who just get tasks and implement them. Try to really understand your customers, because only if we work together, product, design, and engineers, from the very first stage of the project, we can build products that are both secured but also has a very good UX. Thank you very much, and thanks XKCD who inspired this talk and also inspired Dan Wheeler to build this tool. And I'll stick around here for these 2 days. If you want to ask any questions, or if you're shy, you can just ask me in my LinkedIn here. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Alon. Thank you.